So that begs another question, which is because you've clearly defined how important the customer is, defines our overall strategy, right? How do we go to market and how every department operates? Who owns the voice of the customer? It's so important. Who owns it?
Yeah, this is interesting. I think it's everyone, right? At one moment in time with Vectra, I had a person reporting to me and he called himself the voice of the customer because I wanted him to be the liaison between engineering and everyone. So it's like, hey, he represented the field, he represented the customer, making sure that all of the, I would say, recommendations or things were streamlined so we can talk collectively as a group about what is really meant as for the customer. And I really like that because it basically streamlines everything. And because it's easy to say everyone owns it, but you know as well as I do, when you say that, nobody's accountable.
That's why I asked the question, right? Like you've spent time in B2C and B2B. B2C companies have titles like Chief Customer Officer, right? Or Chief Experience Officer, right? There's a defined role in there. And one thing that we've been forced to learn is that there's more and more and more and more B2C expectations that are being put onto our B2B relationships, right?
This idea that every organization has a chief customer officer, right, from a certain size, and that's great. And I think this is really, really important. And I think, you know, again, this comes back about the value realization. This comes back on making sure that, you know, when the customer buys, it's clearly what the pain point is, what are we solving for, and through the cycle, can we make sure we keep on having that proof? And so 100% like a super important function. If this is the voice of the customer, that could be. I just think that also from a CRO perspective, I feel that I'm responsible for the voice of the customer. I'm sure that, you know, the engineering says, oh no, I'm also responsible for the voice of the customer. Marketing will say. So I think we need to own that collectively in that regards. That is my philosophy around it. But definitely, you know, a chief customer officer is super critical to making sure that all of the post-sales activities are done in the right way and the customer is healthy and happy.
I love what you talked about is at least having someone, right, where they're actual, put in their title or whatever, but that is there to collect the voice of the customer and interpret and coordinate internally between all the different departments. Because right now we don't really have that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons that McKinsey study that said less than 15% of companies actually execute on a voice of the customer. Because if we just kind of all have it in our heads, we know it's important, but we haven't operationalized voice of the customer into our go-to-market and really made it, you know, be very diligent about that, then we're just leaving opportunity on the table.
I 100% agree with that. So that's why I said, like, you know, when we had someone like that in that particular role, and that was great because, again, it's a collecting of data, collecting of information. And then it's not about only that, it's to making sure that that person is also respected, you know, across a different organization, knows what he's talking about. So we can collectively think about what is needed. It's more the voice of the customer, more has to do with the roadmap, in my opinion, a lot of times. But at the same token, you can also use the voice of the customer for messaging and everything else. Right? So I think you're right.
I see this a lot on this podcast. Like, there's not a company out there that says, no, we're not customer obsessed. We're not customer first, right? We all are, but it really is to the degree that we execute on that.
Yeah, but again, it's like with everything else, right? Words don't mean anything until you act. And that goes into come back to the culture, right? I mean, there's a problem. Listen, every product has a problem. It's the way you, when there's a problem, how do you act towards that customer? Do you pick up the phone on the weekend? You know, can you call them to say, hey, we're going to solve it and be there and responsiveness? And I think that's the same. If you bring that culture to the organization, I think you're good. But that's not easy. It goes back to people having the same philosophy and mantra to make sure that they understand if we do right with the customer, we can scale this business moving forward.